Boeing, a venerable manufacturer, is now eating dust thanks to SpaceX, as NASA's administrator finally states that SpaceX will never be able to defeat the Starliner. SpaceX was once the underdog in the aerospace sector and was on the verge of bankruptcy, but it has come a long way since then, winning over even its harshest detractors. However, how did SpaceX defeat Boeing? And what kind of affiliation does the business have with NASA? Welcome back to another exciting video from Informative Scoop. Today's video is about Game Over. NASA declared Boeing Starliner useless, can't beat SpaceX. Before we start the video, please subscribe and press the bell icon. Let's look. The intense rivalry. There were two businesses actively engaged in competition when the commercial race for space began. The first was Boeing, a venerable aerospace business with expertise in developing aircraft. It was a major U.S. defense contractor for many years and a major player in international aviation. The second was SpaceX, a startup with no particular history other than a youthful founder and a few early triumphs. It was expected that Boeing would dominate the space industry, but things didn't turn out how we had hoped. Boeing's development of spacecraft was hampered by a slew of mistakes, setbacks, and delays, as well as sticky valves, software problems, unsuccessful test flights, and legal disputes. While SpaceX was already moving toward the launch path, Boeing was struggling to gain stability. Imagine the year 2022. With the Crew Dragon vehicle, SpaceX has launched its 6th astronaut mission for NASA to the International Space Station, and the Falcon 9 rocket has launched more than 3,000 satellites. SpaceX is now recognized as a leader in the aerospace sector. This year, the corporation used the Falcon to launch 46 additional Sterling satellites. In the meantime, the Boeing CST-100 Starliner has just completed its first flight demonstration. The project is 2.5 years behind schedule. Bill Nelson, the current NASA administrator, has been more receptive to the idea of commercial space enterprises during his tenure as a Florida congressman and subsequently senator. Thanks to SpaceX's significant success in its early years of operation and NASA's tenacity toward the company, he spearheaded the opposition to the Obama administration's plan to collaborate with private corporations and battled against the use of U.S. commercial space companies for spaceflight. Lori Garver Nelson, a former second-in-command at NASA, claims that SpaceX and its perennially contentious founder Elon Musk are disliked. She recalled Nelson not being overly pleased with Musk's public declaration that he could assist NASA and advising her to get her boy Elon in line as a born-again advocate of commercial space. He has stated that he has always favored commercial space and the NASA Commercial Crew program. He asserts that a succession of regulations enacted beginning in the middle of the 1980s created the groundwork for the commercial real estate industry. Talking about it, "I believe the private space business is very advantageous," he remarked. "Just consider what SpaceX has already managed to achieve for him." In order to promote competition and provide NASA with different pathways for space exploration, fixed contracts were given to private space businesses. The space agency allocated 80% of its budget for hiring commercial space companies in its fiscal report for 2021. In response to SpaceX assertions that the Starship will launch with 17 million pounds of thrust as opposed to SLS's 9.5 million, the Starship will be more powerful than NASA SLS. Nelson reiterated that he didn't see it that way. His attempt to retract and downplay his statements about SpaceX and commercial space firms has raised eyebrows, but it is not entirely unexpected given the successes of these companies, particularly SpaceX. Without SpaceX, NASA would have had to uncomfortably rely on Russia repeatedly and might not have advanced as far as it has now. SpaceX wasn't always, though. Elon Musk donated the company's first funding, hence it had little to no money for professional recruiting when it was established in 2002. Every attempt to launch a rocket had failed miserably by September 2008, nearly driving the enterprise into bankruptcy. For a fourth launch, Elon was able to gather enough funding to put it on an uphill trajectory. From that point forward, the business and Boeing were awarded the first NASA contract, valued at $6.8 billion, to transport NASA astronauts to the ISS. Another $900 million contract for the launch of Crews 7, 8, and 9 to the ISS was given to SpaceX in August. NASA expanded its collaboration with. If you've been enjoying the video thus far, click the like button and be sure to subscribe for more by issuing a $1.4 billion contract for 5 more missions. An intriguing video. By extending their collaboration through 2030, SpaceX will receive total payments for 14 completely operational astronaut missions totaling around $5 billion. The corporation was worth $127 billion by May 2022. Become a corporation renowned for its reusable rocket, at last. With the aim of making humanity a multi-planetary species, efficiency is also important. SpaceX has launched more astronauts into space than any other space agency or private space enterprise since its Crew Dragon made its debut in 2020. It has outperformed Russia's Soyuz vehicle, the Artemis program, and the total number of astronauts launched by China. NASA ended the Space Shuttle program in 2011 due to a number of factors, including high costs, slow turnaround times, and catastrophic accidents. It was forced to rely only on Russian Soyuz aircraft with 3 seats, paying a high price for the chance. NASA intends to independently revive America's presence on the Moon and ISS through the Artemis mission, re-establishing the U.S. as the front-runner in space travel. The program's ultimate objective is to use the Moon as a stepping stone for future Mars exploration. Third, Steve Swanson, a NASA astronaut, emphasized the significance of the Artemis, claiming that because reaching Mars is a challenging expedition, the Moon will be used as a testbed. Here SpaceX enters the picture. With NASA, SpaceX has consistently collaborated on a number of astronaut flights. Additionally, in April 2021, the organization chose SpaceX to build a crucial component of its Artemis mission and create American presence on the Moon. After receiving the $2.9 billion deal, SpaceX will create the first commercial human lander to send 2 American astronauts to the Moon's surface. HLS program manager Lisa Watson-Morgan said, "We are optimistic in NASA's relationship with SpaceX to help us achieve the Artemis mission and look forward to continue our work toward landing astronauts on the Moon to get ready for the next big leap towards Mars." The price of the contract is 13% of what it would have cost NASA to build the spacecraft itself, which would have totaled $25 billion. While NASA Orion is in orbit, the projected Starship will make its premiere, and 2 astronauts will be transferred to the Starship. The Orion will stay in orbit while the Starship lowers the astronauts to the surface of the Moon and returns them to Orion at the end of the mission. The Starship is not equipped to undertake a return trip to Earth at that time. SpaceX will consult closely with NASA on the lander designed to ensure that the final product complies with NASA's criteria and human space flight regulations because only the Orion is capable of returning for the mission. In accordance with Nelson's assertion, SpaceX is making good progress toward creating a vehicle that can land astronauts on the Moon. The Artemis 1 mission, which was described as a significant historical shift, was to serve as NASA's official launch of the Artemis program this year. In order to complete its mission of returning to the Moon by 2025, it intends to launch its 322 feet SLS rocket for the first time. To demonstrate the SLS in this trip will serve as a stress test. Although things didn't go as planned, systems are sufficient to send humans to the Moon and back in the upcoming years. There were numerous technical issues with the SLS test flight. The engines failed during the August rocket launch attempt, which was abandoned. A hydrogen leak prevented the September launch from going ahead. The mega rocket's SLS cost $23 billion to construct, took 12 years to complete, and is still not ready for launch. This excludes the Orion, which NASA designed as their next-generation human space flight capsule at a cost of $20.4 billion. The current schedule for the mission is November. For the first time since 1972, if Artemis 1 is a success, preparation for Artemis 2 will start right away with astronauts on board. And, according to Bill Nelson, if Artemis 1 is a success, people will return to the Moon to stay, learn, create, and develop new technologies, new systems, and new spacecraft in order to travel to Mars, according to NASA Inspector General Paul Martin. The program will cost the agency $93 billion in total between 2012 and 2025. One launch of Artemis will set the agency back $4.1 billion. In contrast, SpaceX's Starship rockets are anticipated to cost less than $10 million, whereas the company's current Falcon 9 launches cost $62 million. In the last 10 years, NASA has transformed from an underdog to a leader, managing 2/3 of its launches, research payloads, and contributing to aerospace sector breakthroughs. That's all for today. Thanks for watching the video. If you enjoyed it, please like, share, and subscribe to our channel for more exciting content.